Hello to all of you who made the choice to listen to us today. You took an action like we did when we decided to create and keep developing Partnership in Action podcast. Welcome to this open and friendly conversational space. My name is Lara Homans.
And I am Marlene Thomas.
And this is our joint podcast, Partnership in Action. As usual, at the beginning, we are introducing each other. Everyone who listens to us now, please welcome with me the podcast co-host, Marlene Thomas. Marlene is the president of Thomas Management Consulting. She is professional certified coach, and she is immediate past president of the ICF Metro DC Charter Chapter. And this is why and how we met. And we started communicating and partnering together last year in March 2022. For me, Marlene is soul-driven partner. Soul-driven partner with whom I can share the way and create and lead new stories. This podcast is an example what is possible to co-create together. Marlene, it's great to be with you again. You know that I value so much this inspiring opportunity, maybe sometimes challenging, to co-create this new media project together.
Thank you, Larissa. As always, it is just so great to be with you today. We've got another great topic that we're going to talk about. I just want you to know how much I value your friendship. I value your knowledge. I value your experience. From the moment that we started working together in 2022 in March, you have always been an inspiration for me. Whenever I talk to you, it's not just a conversation. There's so much to learn. You help me grow. And as I've said in the other podcast, you're such a great storyteller. You are just a master at telling stories and helping folks create their own stories. So I just thank you, and I thank you for this opportunity today, and just looking forward to us just going back and forth.
Thank you, Marlene. Your words are touching my soul, and I think we are learning together. I think the beauty of partnership is when we can co-learn, when we can co-create, and when we can co-lead. A few words just to reflect on the previous episode. It was about listening. Did you get any comments or thought after we recorded that episode and shared? Maybe someone shared with you some ideas?
The comments that I have gotten, they weren't specific to that particular podcast, but they are specific to the conversations that we are having and how it impacts them, whether they're coaches. A lot of my clients who are in leadership roles kind of follow us. And so just the fact that we are having the conversations around topics that they can relate to, and how we seamlessly have those conversations. Most of them are saying thank you. Thank you for having conversations around the topics that resonate with me.
Thank you. The comments I received in informal conversation, even from my husband, he said, I started thinking about listening at the investment. He is from financial sector. He is from financial part of the professional world. I heard a few another comments that listening is critically important at the beginning of new experience. Not to listen what I have already known about something, but what is possible to learn. It's like open gates. I like that comment. And another comment was about, it was a question. And the colleagues are asking, how many other focuses are you keeping in mind? They are saying, we like the way how you are framing the title of each conversation. Every time in the same structure, you can lead, but can you partner, for example? when we are talking with focus on coaches, we are saying, can you coach, but can you lead? When we are coming back to talk to leaders, can you lead, but can you listen? And now we are going to talk about, can you lead, but can you reflect? And the colleagues are asking, how many other focuses are you keeping in mind? And I said, every conversation is the open space, and we can see what is possible to discuss. We have some ideas, what we would like to focus on, but we trust the process, we trust the space and the moment when it's happening. So, Marlene, what is here for you? Why it's important to bring attention to reflection as a part of leadership development? You have so strong and solid leadership skills and leadership story behind you. Why it's important?
Well, it's really important because as I have grown in my career and have started my own business, it's really interesting that my experience is that my own personal experience is that when I was in a leadership position, I really didn't think about reflection. I really didn't understand how important it is to take the time and just be still and really reflect on your day. Reflective leadership really is about taking a step back and thinking about how you lead. For leaders, it's really taking a step back, thinking about how you lead, how you show up to the folks that you lead. It's really taking a mirror. It's like taking a mirror. What did I do well today? What should I or what could I have done differently in specific instances? What were my thoughts? What were my actions? Did I really show up as a leader in those instances? As I think about it now, having a reflective leadership practice is so important. It really is. And I just encourage everyone who's listening to us to really think about what that means to you to be a reflective leader. How do you do that? Which I'm sure we'll talk to in a minute.
Thank you for making these important connections between showing up as a leader and reflecting about how you are showing up as a leader. I think it's the question and also the answer to the question, which is very basic, obvious, but not so easy to answer. Who am I as a leader? Other people can say, you are a strong leader, you are inspirational leader, you are very demanding leader, you are task-oriented leader, you are vision-driven leader, you are profit-driven leader, but this is what other people are saying. People whom the leader is leading, but how about the leader, he or she? What I am thinking about myself as a leader. I think it's quite typical for leaders do not reflect in the way maybe coaches are reflecting, but leaders are reflecting. Maybe they are not calling these practices as reflective practices. They are reflecting on what is happening, how to react, and how to react during the actions. But I think the focus of our conversation is just to look at wider and to expand the context and the meaning of reflection. And also to keep the ground and to stay on the ground and to be very practical and how reflection or reflective practices can show up in very busy, unpredictable, challenging, intensive leadership life.
Yeah, what I hear you saying is what does it mean to have an intentional reflective process? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Intention. What
Mhm.
is the intention? To keep or start practicing reflective practices.
Yeah.
Even repeating this word, start practicing reflective practices. When I was younger and when I was leading the 15 plus, very ambitious, task oriented goal-oriented PR consultants when I was the deputy of the project, technical assistant project in Ukraine. I didn't reflect in the way I started reflecting much later. I was reflecting on, okay, what we need to do, what is already done, what we need to do different. Oh, that's clear. But to reflect deeper, actually, I came back to that practices 13 years ago. And 15 minutes journal entry was probably the most challenging task for me. 15 minutes, just 15 minutes. And from that 15 minutes experience, I remember the day exactly, August 6, 2010, 15 minutes of journaling was the beginning of absolutely new experience I started opening and connecting some old things and developing the new things. Since that, the journaling as a reflective practice was with me forever. I'm always offering the leaders with whom I'm working as a coach or consultant, I'm inviting them to start journaling. Not because I love doing it, but because this is a moment when they can be with themselves. Not with anybody else, but with themselves, about themselves, for themselves.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You know, I've journaled for a long time, having been a leader of a lot of organizations, a lot of people. But my journal, I didn't think of it as a reflective process. I thought of it more as part of my meditation process. But when I think about it now, when I go back and I look at my journal from those years, it really was about me, about what I was going through, about the decisions that I had to make as a leader in some of those organizations, about the people that I was leading. Like you, I also encourage my the folks that I coach to really think about having a practice, whether it's in the morning, the afternoon, whatever works for them, where they really just take some time, alone time, to really think about what's important to them, those big decisions that they have to make. Think about it. What does that look like? What is it I have to do? How do I have to show up at that meeting? What are the expectations of me?
And because we are having this conversation and we are recording, people who are listening to us would be able to listen but not interact with us directly. But I'm inviting to share your comments. Just answer the simple question. Are you keeping journal or not? If yes, what is driving you? How this reflective practice is serving you? Or if not, what is on your way?
Yeah,
Marlene,
good question. And if you're not, what are your thoughts around journaling, right?
journaling is just one way or possible way to reflect. You mentioned that when you look back on your previous practices and you were thinking that journaling is kind of meditation. Exactly. It's a meditation with keeping the pen on your hands. That's true. It's kind of meditation, definitely. What do you think? What other kind of reflective practices leaders in young and seasoned leaders or leaders in the middle age can use in addition to journaling?
As I mentioned, meditation. For some, prayer and meditation go together. You know, reflection comes in a lot of ways, and sometimes as simple as asking someone that you respect to give you some feedback. Give me some feedback. We were in this meeting today, and this is what happened. Can you give me some feedback from your perspective about what I did well and what I didn't do well? The other thing is we all have goals, right? And sometimes we hit the marks with those goals, sometimes we don't. How often do you really take the time and just assess the process that you've made? Or maybe some of those lofty goals that you've maybe documented, maybe not, maybe they're in the back of your mind. But again, how often do we just sit and take the time and reflect. And I will tell you, this May I did exactly that. I had on my bucket list a long time to spend a couple of months outside the country. And so starting in May the previous year, I said, that's one of the things that I want to do. It's been a goal of mine, an objective of mine for a long time. And what do I need to do to start making steps toward making that a reality? So part of what I did was every month I had a checklist of things I had to do to move toward making that happen. So again, there are so many ways. Some folks for reflection is an assessment tool. You know, as coaches, we have all kinds of tools and assessments that we use, right? And so some people use that as part of a reflection of who they are. How are they representing themselves in the workplace or to the people that are important to them? Yeah, there's again so many different ways to reflect. So I'm hoping that from today, that between what you and I share, that the folks who are listening will come up with ways that are really important for them because it's different for everybody. What works for me won't necessarily work for someone else.
I remember when you made the post on LinkedIn about your trip to France. I was thinking that it's kind of reflective, meditative, traveling journey. And you just said about that. And I think it's also important, it doesn't matter if you're going to Paris or not. I think it's important to reflect between tasks. I'm saying that it's possible to reflect in between stories when the one story is coming to the end and the new story is already beginning. It can be change of position. It can be change in professional career. It can be change when you are moving from one place to another place. It can be changes between experiences. And just stop and to reflect and to see what was before, where I am now, and where I am going. Another reflective practice can be, I absolutely agree that so many leaders, so many different ways how to reflect. There is interesting. It's not about to change the activities. It's about to do something where it's possible to be together with yourself, like dating with yourself, talking to yourself, thinking with yourself, even not saying anything. I'd like to share another experience or another way how I can reflect. I like making photos. I'm not a professional photographer, no, but I like making photos. And now everybody has very good photo camera on the smartphone, iPhone. When I'm walking, I'm making photos. I'm not making photos of people. I'm making photos of sky and nature, and some things which is really catching my eye. And this is a moment when I'm fully present and I'm making these photos a few seconds. For the last 5 years, I have maybe 25,000 of moments of reflections. Yes.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it's possible to calculate just 5 seconds for each photo. And this is the time for reflective. And I think it helps me to ground, really ground, to feel ground, but paradox, to look at the sky. And sky is always different, always changing, always. It gave me one day, it gave me the reason to start observing that we can see the same sky and I can see the different skies at every given moment when I'm making that photo. Even if there is no cloud, but the color is different because the sun is coming from different sides and because the intensity of sunlight is different. And also, I'm saying that this is a moment when probably I'm the most connected with myself fully, how I see, how I feel, what is my intention? Not just to create the collection of these photos, but just to really reflect the moment, be in the moment. I think this is a major focus of reflection, be in the moment. Another thing which I was not surprised, but it's repeating, not very often, but when I'm working, I think you have this similar experience. when we are working with leaders, they are very busy. And they are busy from task to task, from meeting to meeting, from project to project. And sometimes to stop to reflect means to give the best gift they can give to themselves. 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's the advice that I give my clients. It's interesting. Some of them don't even, I mean, they're sitting in front of their desk and they don't even take a break for lunch. How unhealthy is that? So, one of the other reflective practices that I have, and I know you have too, is reading. I love to read. And because reading helps us stay informed, it's also a way that it provides new perspectives for us, right? And new ideas and new challenges. So I encourage anyone who knows me, anyone who has been coached by me, I can guarantee you that they have a book that or an article or something that I have recommended or sent to them. There is no doubt because that probably is my third favorite reflective practice.
So far, we already invited the leaders who are listening to us, maybe not only the leaders. We will be having another conversation with the same question for coaches. It will be the next episode. Just stay tuned. But for leaders, journaling, not to-do list and crossing the items from the bucket list, but really reflect. Even the small part of investments in time, 5, 15, 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, how long it will be possible, you can decide. The second, meditate, pray. The third, do something differently, not related to being involved in leadership duties. Just look at the sky, look at the ground, make a photo, just stay at the moment and be present in the moment. In any other ways, you can decide how to do it. And fourth, reading and reflecting what you're reading. I'm reading, and if I'm reading the physical book, so my book is with different highlighted parts. If I'm reading several times, it's possible to see yellow, blue, green, orange notes. I can see, hi, it's interesting. I reflected on something else that I didn't reflect when I was reading for the first time or second time.
Yeah, that's the beauty of a physical book versus an ebook, right?
Yeah. I'm missing physical books, really. I have a lot of on my e-reader, but it's not possible to take and to feel these feelings when you're keeping the books. Marlene, what do you think? Are there some limiting beliefs regarding reflections, regarding reflecting practices for leaders? What I heard, for example, reflection is more passive rather active, but we would like to act. We would like to be active leaders. How to deal with this?
I think different people, of course, have different perspectives. Some people, even me, who is a flaming extrovert, think of sometimes think of reflecting as a solo practice, right? It's like I got to do that by myself. That's not fun. But sometimes you need that quiet. You need it can be done in isolation, and sometimes it should be done in isolation. Some people don't think that reflection leads to action. We both talked about journaling, and so I've got several journals. And when I go back and look at the past years, where I was then, what I was dealing with then versus what I'm dealing with now, it is amazing to even me, and it's my life. So, for those folks who think that, reflection, journaling, whatever doesn't lead to action, I challenge you. I challenge you to try it. Not for years, but try it for a month, and you will see the difference. You will feel the difference. And some people think that having a reflective practice is really only for when you have a big decision to make. Wrong. So wrong. you know,
So
having
wrong. Agree.
yeah, so wrong. Having a reflective practice is just a good regular thing to do with no expectations other than it makes you feel good. So, what are your thoughts?
I think it's possible to look at the reflective practices through different angles and by using different eyeglasses. I'm using eyeglasses, you're using eyeglasses. So I think everyone has his or her own optics. And the question is, what is the major focus of your optics, positive or negative? If I'm thinking about reflective practices and my optics are negative, I will see only why it's not good to do it. Because reflecting is about doing nothing. But I'm very focus oriented person. I should go, I should do. Or if I'm reflecting too much, I'm losing the moment to make a decision because it can be paralysis of analysis or by analysis. I need to act. Again, what is the optics? It's interesting. I remember the one masterclass I was delivering in the business school for business leaders. I asked the question I never thought about that it could be the challenge. It's about privacy and security. Putting your thoughts on the papers means that someone can take it and read it. I never thought in that way because it was not crossing my mind. I was never logged them. They were always on the space where I'm working or on my night table. I even never thought about it that someone can take and read. So it's about trust. It's about trusting.
That is a great, great point, Larissa. That's a really good point, though. I never thought about trust in terms of journals. Like you, I actually have a meditation room. So not many people go into that room, but I don't lock up anything. I just write down my thoughts.
But when I was asked that question, I started thinking it probably makes sense because if the environment is not safe, it might be challenging to be really honest with yourself, especially when you are reflecting in the words or in images or when you are fixing these reflections. And then it's necessary to think about some kind of security, some kind of privacy. Sometimes, if I want to reflect on something, I can reflect and I can tear down the paper. That's all. I already reflected. I know it does make sense to keep it. And also, it's possible to find a way how to deal with this. But again, coming back to the optics, keeping the positive optics. Reflection is the really space between something, between stimul and reactions. It's exactly the space where freedom is happening, when the power of choice is showing up. Reflection actually is very proactive practice. It's positive point of view. And I remember one photo I made, and the pond and the green and the leaves and the trees and bushes, and the picture on the water was brighter than the picture and the original areas of that photo. And this is another metaphor. Reflection can sharpen what is necessary to see. And I think this is where the leadership power is, to see brighter, deeper, wider, in more complex way.
That's powerful. It's really powerful because that's what leadership, in a snapshot, that's really what leadership is.
What do you think? Is it possible to have the reflective practices as must have for leaders or would have for leaders? As a part of leadership training, for example, leadership development program, is it possible or it would be too pushy? It would be too demanding?
So I will share with you, I took a class this year for a mastery and coaching class, and having a reflective process was part of that class. So it's something I had to do. And it was easier for me because it's something that I have done. But it was a little bit of a challenge for some of my colleagues who do not engage in a reflective process. And I will tell you one of the things that I got out of the class. At the end, we had to do a capstone project. And one of my colleagues that I actually love this guy. He's a wonderful coach and he's a wonderful human being. And his capstone project was on having a reflective process as a coach. And he talked about it consistently through that class. And so that really, for me, back to whether it should be something you have to do or you should do, it's not something we can demand that leaders do, but I will guarantee you that once they engage in it and once it doesn't feel like it's mandatory, that if they begin that process, they will feel differently about themselves. They will see themselves differently. And so, again, it's one of the things that I encourage all of my leaders to at least consider.
I understand it's not possible to say you should do it, but I think the focus of our conversation and the major message is to listen to yourself. And if really the leader, he or she, is feeling the necessity to be connected with yourself, herself, himself, and to see what kind of reflective practices can serve the most. I just thought about the coaching trends for 2023. I read about those trends on the Forbes website. I can add the link to that article, the Forbes Coaches Council. I was not just surprised, I was so excited to see that one of the trends for leaders in coaching and leadership coaching, linking leadership coaching to journaling, literally. And coaches know that. As you said, as a part of your coaching program on the way to masterful coaching, to your MCC, just journaling. But really masterful leaders, I think, they already have used the reflective practices or would like to use it and are brave to use it. And I
Yeah,
think if our listeners can come up with this conclusion after listening to this conversation, we will be glad.
I think it would be great to hear also what some of our listeners are doing in terms of a reflective practice themselves, right? We haven't covered the universe.
Definitely, we haven't covered the universe and we didn't reinvent the wheel. So these practices exist. Reflection is the part of leadership mastery. We are inviting you to share your thoughts, your reflections, and if you can share what is working for you, how you are benefiting from any kind of reflective practices. As usual, when we are finishing the conversation, we are asking each other, what do you think, what will be the next topic for the next conversation? What is showing up for you, Marlene?
Well, I think, and we've talked about it a little bit here today. We've talked about reflective practice for leaders. What's the reflective practice for coaches? I mentioned the fact that I was in this mastery class and it was a required part of the curriculum. Yeah, I think that would be a really great conversation for us to engage in more in depth next time.
Yeah. The next conversation will be with focus on coaches. The topic will be the same, slightly different. You can coach, but can you reflect? And we are inviting coaches to stay connected with us. It will be the 5th episode of our podcast, but now I'm thinking about the 6th one. And based on our conversation today, my feeling is it would be good to talk about trust.
Mm. That's always a great topic, an
Yeah,
interesting topic. Yes.
it's very complex, very deep,
Hmm.
but it's connected with what we already discussed from partnership, building partnership, leading for the coaches, and listening, and now about reflection.
Yep.
And then we are looking forward, we are moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. That'll be great. That kind of trust is woven through all of the conversations that we've had on the podcast today.
Yeah.
So that's a really good one.
Maybe the last question, Marlene, if you would be reflecting about this conversation in a written way, what a few keywords you can take and reflect about? I'm asking the same questions to myself.
So I think that a couple of key questions for me is what's stopping? What are the things that get in the way of having a reflective practice for leaders? What are the things that are getting in the way? And just the opposite of that. How could you benefit from having a reflective practice?
My reflections will be similar. I will be reflecting about the return on investment to reflection, to keep reflective practices. And I will come back. I will look through some situations when the reflective practices really brought either the challenging decisions. It's not about big or small, it's about the level of challenges, the scale of challenges, not the size. And to see if this case can be used and how I can remind myself when I'm thinking that I don't have time to reflect. When I'm so busy, I'm doing it. Yeah. Do it when it's needed the most and when it's most difficult to do it and to do it. So just to come back and to review my own reflective practices, which is the recent 13 years, and to see what is the next level.
And even as you say that, because you've been so great about sharing your own personal reflections, how do we or how do leaders hold themselves accountable? Right? A lot of folks don't start because they think, oh, this is something I have to do every day. No one says you have to journal every day. There's no written rule about that anywhere.
Yes. And this is a way to make your own rules. And the major thing is to follow your own rules. 5 minutes a day, it's not a big deal. But 5 minutes a day for 1 week, it's already 35 minutes of reflections. It's 35 minutes of investment into myself, really. And this is when the small things or atomic habits can create the discipline, and discipline can organize the way how it's possible to reflect in more effective way, efficient way. When it became the habits, but consciously, and the practice actually, practice makes process.
I like how you changed that. Practice makes process. Absolutely.
Yeah.
One step at a time.
Like coaches like to say, one conversation at a time.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. One question at a time.
Hmm.
One reflection at a time. So probably is the best way to summarize our conversation, one reflection at a time.
Hmm.
Thank you, Marlene, for sharing wise and wonderful and open reflections about the topic, which is very wide
Yeah.
and very deep, and we just touched. And maybe later we come back to look in the reflection leadership practices from different angles, but at least we did it today. Thank you.
Thank you. Another great conversation, Larissa. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Marlene. It's possible because we are doing it together. And two voices and two ways of how to reflect about reflections And I want to remind those who are listening to us that it was a great privilege to have this conversation with Marlene Thomas. And for coaches who would like to follow with this topic, but be focused on the conversation mastery for coaches, just stay connected, stay tuned, and the next episode will be about reflecting practices for coaches. And we are inviting you to come back. And if you would like to be informed, subscribe to the channel and to share your comments and ask questions, and we will be happy to answer them the next time. See you very soon for the next conversation.
Bye, everybody.